So welcome back everyone to our lesson on IB Business H11. Today we'll be diving into 1.4, which is stakeholders. So let's start our lesson without further ado. So before we start our lesson, actually, I would like to define what a stakeholder actually means. So a stakeholder essentially is in any group or individual that affects an organization or is affected by it. So you can see that the keywords I've highlighted is any individual or group that affects an organization or is affected by it. So you, as an individual or group, can affect an organization, and simultaneously, the organization can affect you as a group or individual to make specific decisions, such as marketing, which will be lectured in Unit 4. So here you can be a stakeholder because you, as an individual or group, can influence a business decision on whether their proposals should continue. So more details into that later on. So here is basically a picture of the notes I have taken down. Here I don't think that it's written very clearly, so but no worries. There will be a more zoomed in picture on for you to see, and there will be a specific guidance and explanation for each stakeholders. But before that, I want you to notice that I have differentiated stakeholders into two internal and external stakeholders here. It is because internal and external is very different. You can see internal here and external stakeholders. It is because that internal stakeholders are the ones that is within the company, and the external stakeholders are the one that is not within the company. However, they can also be addressed and also influence a company's decision indirectly. So here is what I want to show you here, internal and external, and under the main umbrella of stakeholders, which is up here. Alright, so here, I have zoomed in stakeholders internal here. There's 4 main stages, or as in categories of internal stakeholders, which is basically the people working within the company. So you can see here that the 4 categories are broken down into employees, managers, directors, or stakeholders. Stakeholders as in just normal stakeholders. However, directors can be further broken into chief executive or non-chief executive. That one we won't be focusing into that much because 1.4 is purely about stakeholders. So let's take a look on each individual's role of responsibility within the organization. So here, employees, they are basically the working ones, or no, you're not going to say the working ones as in the actual formal assessment, you can say as in staff or the people hired who help to improve or maintain working conditions and to also to promote job opportunities. Basically, they help to maintain a daily basis of their day-to-day job operations of the company to allow the company to operate smoothly. Next, we have managers. Their main job is basically to be responsible to oversee function and operations, which is basically dealt by employees or operated by employees to allow managers to oversee it. Their job, as in you can see a star here, is to strive for improvements also and to improve the level of competitions. The level of competitions can be developed into more detail because competitions can be defined as a much broader scope, because competition is shown how one company is trying to win, as you can see, win another company over by producing a product which is attracting more customers than the other one, in which that level of competitiveness is required in order for both 2 or more companies to remain competitive within the industry market. The marketing will be shown more in Unit 4, so I'm not going to talk about that right now. But here you can see how it improves salary by trying to gain opportunities to raise problems to directors. So improved salaries not only include for the managers but also include for the employees themselves. And fringe benefits, for example, travel benefits, holiday benefits, all of those stuff can also be extracted or enriched by the managers, who are responsible to grind opportunities for the internal stakeholders. Next off, we have directors, another stage above the managers. Their job is basically responsible for the overall operations of the company on behalf of the stakeholders. You can see how here I've differentiated the overseas functioning. However, the directors oversee all operations of the company. The word company here is also very required, because the word company shows that the directors oversee the whole company while the managers only oversees employees but not directors. So basically you're going from this direction but not from this direction up. So that is why the director's job is also to be concerned on the organization's return and invested, and also to have a similar interest to managers, because managers' job is very similar to a director's one, because to maintain level of competitions, improve salaries and fringe benefits, in which that directors can be providing to both managers and employees, but also these can be further discussed in Unit 2 as well, which is human resources. Finally, for internal stakeholders, we have internal stakeholders. It's basically people who buy shares from a company, as in a market share, but not in terms of they are actually an employee. So you can see how they have the rights to share any profit the company earns, and they would like to expect financial returns on the investment. Basically, stakeholders, sorry, not shareholders. Just want to say that shareholders isn't stakeholders. Internal stakeholders are people who buy shares of a company using financial investments, by investing it into the company, either for most likely long term. Afterwards, they would like to expect a financial yield of a growth from the company through their hopefully through their investment. But then the main problem for internal stakeholders is that their investment is all based on the yield of profit from the company. So if the company makes a loss, the internal stakeholders will also make a loss. But if the company yields a profit, then that means that the internal stakeholders will also yield a profit, because the company is required to repay the stakeholders once they decide to extract all the shares, or during their periodically payment. Alright, so this is basically what the internal stakeholders is for, and let's move on to external stakeholders, the other stage of it. You can see external stakeholders, we have 5 more: customers, competitors, suppliers, pressure groups, and the government itself. So let's take a look into specific ones. Customers, most straightforward, is basically you as a customer or consumer. Those two words are interchangeable, as a client who pays for goods or service from a business. And basically the cheaper the price, the more safer the product and the good service, than where the value for money. So basically, customers value high quality and low price, because that can be called as a bargain product, because that is the most valuable price of a product they would like. However, if the company continues to do that, they will most likely run out of profits, because they are producing their products at a high quality but selling at a low rate. That is something we'll be working into 4.2 for product positioning maps. But it's just that customers is an external stakeholder, because they provide a source of finance to the company. Competitors, next up over here, is a organizational business rivals that competes in the same industry. So basically, competitors are similar companies that also strives to develop the same product, but then they are promoting within their same industry to attract the same kind of customer. This, as I mentioned, to increase competitiveness, is all shown here, because the competitors are a type of external stakeholders. So as an example, I would say you can say how Apple and Samsung could be a competitor of themselves because they are both providing, they're both manufacturing phones, and the target customers will probably be people, middle class people to higher class people. So that is the main problem on the level of competitiveness, and how in order to remain competitive they strive to produce new products every few years in order to attract a gain of customers and perhaps a continuous flow of customer loyalty. Next off, we have suppliers. Basically, the group of people who provide goods or service to another organization. You can see how Pepsi supplies to KFC as a product, which is, you can see, as a supplier to the producer. Their improvements would be that the securing contracts with regular customers would be a requirement in order for a continuous flow of supplies for the company, because if there's no continuous supply, the main problem would be that they are unable to do so of a continuous flow. So next off, we have pressure groups here, basically an organization who comes together for a common cause, which they would most likely want to achieve a goal together for the company or towards the company, opposing or agreeing the company's mission, vision, or some proposal they have made. And finally, we have the government of the country. It's basically an external stakeholder of an organization which operates within the country. Basically, it enforces policies in order to protect legislation and also its employees' rights. For example, its salary and its minimum wages and all of those stuff. So you can see how both internal and external stakeholders can have mutual benefits and conflicts. So this page will mostly talk about the benefits, because you can see how managers and employees are both mentioned and internal stakeholders, a type of internal stakeholders that strive for improvement within the company. Pressure groups and employees are basically oppose certain projects and have the potential to harm the environment. They basically can benefit the local community in terms of the employment. And basically, the pressure groups can pressure a company to hire more people as employees, in which they can benefit the local community by having more people hired. That is why it can be a mutual benefit instead of a mutual conflict. Besides benefit, there must be conflict, right? So let's move on to conflicts here. Shareholders and managers, shareholders and government, and suppliers to customers. Most of these, as what I have mentioned, was already mentioned during the explanation of these, so I won't be going over through again. But if you would like to take a look at this, the link of this presentation is shared, so you are more than free to take a look at the slides. So that's the presentation finished. Before we end this video, I would like to go through some practice questions with you. So this will be a 1-mark question on the paper. X is a type of external stakeholders are not part of the organization but have a direct interest in its activities. So I would give you 10 seconds to think of what X is, as a clue will be an external stakeholder. Have you found out the answer yet? Let's review the answer to see whether you have got it correctly or not. So X is the answer of a local community. As you can see, the accepted answer here is a local community. It's because local pressure groups and the local communities are external stakeholders, and they do not belong to the business organization, but they take great interest in its activities. So basically, this is a further description of what the definition from here is. The pressure groups and local communities are X. So these are both allowed for the answers. So if you have gotten this correct, good job to you. We have one more question to go, so let's do this. So one more question is a multiple choice here. Which of the following is not an internal stakeholder group? customer, manager, employee, and or shareholder. So without referring back to previous slides, I want you to think about what you have learned from the lesson, and to see whether you can formulate and distinguish which one is an internal stakeholder group. 10 seconds. Have you gotten it? Alright, the answer is actually customers. It is because customers is an external stakeholder. As I mentioned here from the previous beginning of external stakeholders, it's a type of people or a group or individual, depending on how you see the customers, that pays for goods or service within the business or the company. That is why it is not internal, because internal is defined as people who work within the company. Customers are people who is working with not working within the company but outside of the company. That is why they're focused on the business, making products to meet their wants and needs, and others. All three of these are internal stakeholders. For achieving the products and meeting their wants and needs would be the definition of marketing, and this will be covered in unit 4.1. So we'll not be delving into 4.1 yet. But that's all. Hope you have gotten these two practice problems correct. If you do have any comments, feel free to leave in the comment section below. I will be reading all the comments, and I'll be looking forward to having you in our next session or our lesson as well. So thank you for paying attention to our 1.4 Business HL on stakeholders.